Welcome to the Community Health Worker Instructor course. This course will prepare you for certification as an instructor in the state of Texas. Please remember to turn off autoplay in the upper right-hand corner of your screen so you won't feed into the next video. Let's begin. This video is about learning strategies and learning styles, delivery of high-quality adult learning experiences. This video will assist you in becoming familiar with the needs of the adult learner, learning strategies as they are best suited for adult learning, different learning styles, and the unique needs of the adult learner. You may think back to some of your readings. Reading 3, Effective Adult Learning, a Toolkit for Teaching Adults, and Reading 4, The Ultimate Educator, Achieving Maximum Adult Learning Through Training and Instruction, Chapter 3, Ultimate Adult Learning, as you go through this video. Right before this video began, you watched a clip addressing the needs of the adult learner. This video exposed you to the beginnings of what needs to be considered when conducting adult education. A learning strategy is simply the term used for how we teach information. There are many strategies for teaching materials to community health workers and patients. During this presentation, we will look at a few learning strategies that give you more information about strategies that work best for each learning style. As we move through the Community Health Worker Instructor course, we will use the different learning strategies so that you have experience with a variety of learning methods and can teach students with different learning styles effectively. Let's talk a little bit about role-playing and brainstorming. Role-play is a special kind of technique using a case study in which there is an explicit situation established with students playing specific roles, spontaneously saying and doing what they understand their character would in that situation. Debriefing a role play is very important, as this is the opportunity for the instructor to ensure that the students have learned the objective from the role play. Brainstorming is a group technique for generating new, useful ideas and promoting creative thinking. It can be used to help define what project or problem to work on, to diagnose problems, remediate a project by coming up with possible solutions, and to identify possible resistance to proposed solutions. During brainstorming sessions, people should avoid criticizing or rewarding ideas. You're trying to open up possibilities and break down incorrect assumptions about the problem's limits. Judgment and analysis at this stage stunts idea generation and limits creativity. It's important that the instructor facilitate an evaluation of ideas at the end of the session. This is the time to explore solutions further using conventional approaches. Instructor lecture is traditionally in a teacher-centered classroom where instructors control their environment because they have a monopoly on information that is provided. Often the conversation is one-sided, with the instructor doing the majority of the talking to deliver the majority of the information. Cooperative learning, however, has had research conducted that shows that organizing students into cooperative groups yields a positive effect on overall learning. When applying cooperative learning strategies, keep groups small and don't overuse this strategy. Be systematic and consistent in your approach. When grouping students, consider a variety of criteria, such as common experience or interests. Vary group sizes and objectives. Design group work around the core components of cooperative learning: positive interdependence, group processing, appropriate use of social skills, face-to-face interaction, and individual and group accountability. Games can take many forms, but in the classroom, any activity that involves a competition, social interaction, and some form of prize or award would be considered a game. Classroom game activities are typically not graded, and student participation is based on the desire to contribute to a team or to individually achieve some prize or recognition. Usually, games have winners. Ideally, even the losers of the game should feel that the experience was enjoyable. During discussions, the course instructor encourages the participation of all of the members of the group in a facilitated discussion designed to address essential elements of the learning objectives. This learning strategy is a form of participatory learning and is a good opportunity to gain information associated with the group members' expertise and experience. Using discussions as a primary teaching method allows the instructor to stimulate critical thinking. As the instructor establishes a rapport with the students, the instructor can demonstrate that he or she appreciates the students' contributions, at the same time challenging them to think more deeply and to articulate their ideas more clearly. Frequent questions, whether asked by the instructor or by the students, provide a means of measuring learning and exploring in depth the key concepts of the course. Demonstrations and models. When learning something new, it is often helpful to watch someone doing the same task. Unlike an explanation from an instructor or a textbook, which requires learners to visualize a particular concept or process it themselves, a demonstration enables concepts and processes to be observed directly, which in turn makes learning easier. As a teaching technique, a demonstration is a valuable method for getting students to learn by doing. Many forms of models are used in instruction. In the concrete sense, instructors can provide three-dimensional for students to explore. For example, a foot to use for teaching foot care to a diabetes patient, or a plate divided to show food group items and proportions. When using video presentations, instructors can use commercially produced videos for educational purposes, or instructors can video students to produce their own videos. This technique is useful in improving cognitive and in developing communication skills. A map is a visual organizer that can enrich students' understanding of a new concept, sometimes also called a concept map. Mapping uses a graphic organizer, and students think about the concept in several ways. Most concept map organizers engage students in answering questions such as, what is it? What is it like? What are some examples? Maps may deepen understanding and comprehension. Maps help organize new information. Maps help make meaningful connections between the main idea and other information. And they're also easy to construct and can be used with any content area. The pre-work reading assignments introduced you to the three learning styles: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Individuals develop a preference for sending and receiving information through one sense over another. It is estimated that approximately 65% of the population learns by receiving information they have seen, the visual learning. Approximately 30% of the population learns by receiving information that is heard, the auditory learners. Only 5% of the population receives information best through the sense of touch, kinesthetic learners. The auditory learning style is one of three learning styles. People with an auditory learning style learn through listening. An auditory learner depends on hearing and speaking as a main way of learning and must be able to hear what is being said in order to understand. They also use their listening and repeating skills to sort through information. There are techniques that can be used when working with an auditory learner to improve cognition. Auditory learners benefit more from hearing information than seeing it in written form. Auditory learners may appear not to be paying attention, but are often actively listening. Auditory learners assimilate new knowledge and skills by describing the behaviors or facts to be learned aloud. and absorb new information by reading aloud. Auditory learners talk through problems, procedures, or tasks, correlate new behaviors or knowledge with auditory stimuli, and get distracted by too many visual stimuli. The visual learning style is a style in which ideas, concepts, data, and other information are associated with images and techniques. Visual learners prefer to see information. There are techniques that can be used when working with a visual learner to improve cognition. Visual learners focus on using the sense of sight to learn and to enhance learning, prefer written instructions and handouts with information, often sit in the front of a classroom because they need to see the instructor to effectively process information, take detailed notes, and benefit from the use of color, illustrations, and graphics as part of handouts, PowerPoint presentations, or computer programs. Visual learners prefer quiet or a minimum of auditory or tactile stimulation when concentrating. The kinesthetic learning style is one in which learning takes place by the student carrying out a physical activity rather than listening to a lecture or watching a demonstration. People with a preference for kinesthetic learning are commonly known as doers. Kinesthetic learners depend on physical participation in a learning activity to absorb knowledge. Generally, kinesthetic learners need to take frequent breaks, prefer hands-on learning activities such as demonstration and simulation, can facilitate learning by handling equipment and manipulating objects, acquire new knowledge best when accompanied by physical movement. Listening to audio tapes while exercising is an example of a technique useful in knowledge acquisition. Kinesthetic learners take a hands-on approach, which supersedes the need to read about or hear about the task. The best learning strategies for working with the auditory learner are role play, brainstorming, lecture, cooperative learning, games, discussions, and video. The best learning strategies for working with the visual learner are demonstrations and models, mapping, note-taking during lectures, discussions, and video, and games. The best learning strategies for working with the kinesthetic learner are demonstrations and models, cooperative learning, games, making videos, role play, mapping, and brainstorming. When you think back to the introductory video that you saw before we began here, more than anything, recall that as far as characteristics of adult learning, that adult learners need content to be useful. Remember this helpful pyramid of learning. Learning strategies and the retention of information are impacted most through participatory teaching methods. There's less retention when passive teaching methods are utilized. Remember to read your audience and apply the best learning strategies to the students with whom you are working.